Hey, welcome to this deep dive.
Great to be here.
We are jumping straight into what looks like a really significant economic shift happening right now. It's all about UK manufacturing and its relationship with the US market. It seems things are changing pretty dramatically.
Yeah, the signals are certainly strong.
We've gathered a whole stack of sources, you've shared articles, some research data notes, and our mission today is really to unpack what's driving this shift and what the knock-on effects are for the UK economy.
Right, cutting through the noise.
Exactly. So let's dive right in. What seems to be the main catalyst here? What's kicking this all off?
Well, looking at the material, it seems the primary driver is actually a policy change over in the U.S., specifically the reintroduction of certain
The
tariffs.
tariffs.
Yeah, that's really altered the playing field, making the U.S. market, well, significantly less attractive for U.K. goods, less competitive.
Okay, tariffs are key then. Can you give us a bit more detail? Like what kind of tariffs are we talking about and why are they having such a big impact according to the sources?
Sure. So the U.S. government has brought back a 10% tariff on quite a range of U.K. goods. Now, 10% might not sound like a huge number on its own,
Hmm.
but the sources really emphasize how this hits hard in major sectors. Think automotive, think steel.
Hmm.
For industries like those, often working on pretty specific margins, that extra 10% cost, it can really be the difference.
The difference between making a sale or not.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It makes it much tougher to compete against, say, domestic U.S. producers or goods coming in from countries that don't face this tariff. It just prices them out in some cases.
Wow, okay. A 10% hit on key sectors like cars and steel.
Yeah,
Well,
that sounds like a serious headache.
mm-hmm.
So how are UK manufacturers actually reacting? What are they doing on the ground to sort of navigate this? Well, it's definitely forcing a strategic rethink. What we're seeing in the sources is that many manufacturers are responding by actively diversifying, spreading their bets, you could say.
Diversifying where they sell.
Precisely. Instead of relying so heavily on the U.S. market, they're looking much more towards markets in the EU, the Asia-Pacific region, and the Middle East, too.
Okay.
The analysis suggests these regions just offer more favorable or maybe more stable trade conditions right now compared to the U.S. with these new costs and uncertainties.
That makes sense as a strategy. A necessary one, it sounds like. But, big strategic shifts often come with some pain, especially in the short term. So what does this all mean for the UK economy more broadly?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? This diversification, it's more of a long-term adjustment. Short-term, though, the most direct hit is a pretty significant drop in exports to the U.S.
How significant are we talking?
Well, there was one really striking data point in the material. Apparently, UK exports to the U.S. fell by, get this, $2 billion.
2 billion.
Yeah, in just 1 month, April 2025.
Wow, that is incredibly sharp, just for 1 month.
It is. And the source that provided that figure noted it wasn't just a blip. It was actually the steepest single monthly decline in exports to the U.S. since records began, way back in 1997.
Goodness, since 97.
Yeah. And a drop like that, it feeds directly into a wider contraction that seems to be happening across the UK's manufacturing sector overall.
That scale of contraction and such a sharp export drop, that must be having real-world consequences for people. What about jobs? Are we seeing job losses mentioned in the sources?
Unfortunately, yes. That's coming through as a growing concern.
Oh.
The automotive industry, which you mentioned earlier.
Right, particularly hit hard.
Exactly. It seems particularly exposed because of that drop in U.S. demand thanks to the tariffs.
Hmm.
And that's already leading to significant layoffs in some areas, according to the reports. It's a really tough outcome of this trade friction.
Yeah, that's incredibly difficult for the workers and communities caught up in that. So given this impact, what's the UK government doing? Are they stepping in at all?
They are, yeah. It looks like they're developing what the sources are calling a comprehensive industrial strategy, basically trying to support manufacturers through this.
An industrial strategy. So like a plan.
Kind of, yeah. A plan involving things like investing in domestic industries, trying to strengthen them here at home. Also actively seeking out and negotiating new trade agreements with other countries.
To open up those alternative markets you mentioned.
Exactly. Places like the EU, Asia Pacific, and also providing some financial assistance, targeted support, it seems, for the sectors that are being hit the hardest by these U.S. tariffs.
So a mix of immediate help and trying to forge new paths. Okay, looking ahead then. What does the future hold for UK manufacturers, given this whole situation? Can they sort of pull through this?
Well, nobody's pretending the current situation with the U.S. tariffs isn't challenging. It clearly is, and it's causing real economic pain right now. But the sources do point towards potential for growth in those new markets they're exploring.
So there's an upside, potentially.
Potentially, yes. The outlook suggests that if they can successfully embrace innovation, maybe focus on modern areas like green tech, digital infrastructure, that kind of thing, as part of this new strategy.
Right.
And crucially, if they succeed in diversifying where they sell, moving away from being so reliant on any single market, then UK manufacturers could actually build greater resilience, be better prepared for future trade shocks like this one. It's a tough moment, but maybe one that forces necessary changes in the long run.
That makes a lot of sense. Facing a setback, but maybe using it as a catalyst to become, I suppose, stronger and more adaptable down the line.
That seems to be the hope, yes.
So if we boil it down, the core takeaway here is that these U.S. tariffs have really triggered a significant and quite painful pivot for UK manufacturers. It's hitting exports and jobs immediately, but it's also pushing this necessary drive towards diversification and prompting a government strategy that's aiming for, well, resilience and finding growth in new areas around the globe.
Precisely. That sums it up well.
It definitely leaves you with a pretty fascinating thought to mull over, doesn't it? How might these specific tariff issues, these shifts driven by U.S. policy, not just impact the UK, but potentially start to kind of redraw the whole map of global manufacturing trade routes in the longer term?
That's a big question for sure.
Something to think about anyway. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the sources today.
Thank you. It was good to discuss.
Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.